Welcome, friends. Gord's Poetry Show number 16. Here's looking at you. We noted recently the passing of Raymond Souster, a long-lived and much celebrated Canadian poet and, how shall I say, instigator of many things modernist, including Contact Magazine and Contact Press. From Brian Traherne's very fine and recent anthology, Canadian Poetry, 1920 to 1960. Here's some Raymond for you. Night of Rain. Rain on the streets. Go ahead. Make up your little poem about wet boughs and the silver sandals of the rain. It's still one hell of a night, and the old man on the Queen Street pavements won't burn any cigarettes. The boys and girls on these other streets won't bloom like any spring flowers tangled in dark, rotted weeds, while that tortuous stream of life that never ends, along the pus lines of this, my city, will cage itself in the four trapped walls of furnished and unfurnished rooms, waiting for this night to go, this night to go, this darkness of their lives. Young girls. With night full of spring and stars, we stand here in this dark doorway and watch the young girls pass, 2, 3 together, hand in hand. They are like flowers whose fragrance hasn't sprung or awakened, whose bodies now dimly feel the flooding, upward welling of the trees, whose senses, caressed by the wind's soft fingers, reel with a mild delirium that makes them ill at ease. They lie awake at night, unable to sleep, then walk the streets, kindled by strange desires. They steal lightning glances at us, unable to keep control upon those subterranean fires. We whistle after them, then laugh, for they stiffen, not knowing what to do or say. These words, this music. Although we've been singing now for more than an hour, it's only as the darkness builds, as stars pierce through, that the music of the two accordions, the words of our mouths, raised in these thousand-throated songs, take on beauty, a pathos never intended, something we never dreamed could or would ever happen. So we sing on and on, not wanting to end this warmth, this comradeship flowing suddenly like good wine, a feeling electric, flashing invisible sparks along the whole crowded deck length, while this good ship, speeding us home from Europe's madness, pulses, shivers, as its funnels lay plumes on the wake of seething water. These words we sing, this music playing, our heartfelt thanks rising up to the heavenly angels. Study the bath. In the dim light of the bathroom, a woman steps from white tub, towel around her shoulders. Drops of water glisten on her body, from slight buttocks, neck, tight belly, fall at intervals from the slightly plumed oval of crotch. The neck bent forward, eyes collected, her attention gathered at the end of fingers, lovingly removing dead, flaked skin from the twin nipples. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you for a life dedicated to beauty and its transmission. Jacqueline Larson, her recent collection, Salt Physic. The poem, Erratic. South of the Red Deer and years west of memory, a boulder rests miles from its original ice sheet in a field's wild dream soured clean by glacier, and then this human clearing. Settlers, which mean change, where aspen competes with grassland for sunlight. Liminal and loam rich at Pine Creek among leaves trembling like tickets out of there. A girl in the excess of her body erratic. Her heart astringent as chokeberry, she has slipped away from the younger sister's croon and fumble in scrub willow and farm boys beyond the fire. Self-conscious between older women with rye on ice and sunglasses, between younger teens at lake edge and foxtails. Below Boreal and north of grassland, only the roughest terrain remains original. The place is cultivated by loss. Woodland caribou, whooping crane, rivers channeled between pussy willow and aster, kids in bathing suits, grasses dominion, aspen where water collects in what locals call scrub brush, useless, therefore natural. She's told her body's rough terrain, her subtle depressions and mind competing with absence for sunlight, is natural. She knows nothing of nature. Her mind is a coulee full of rough scrub between trees and lake, useless as this ache and yearn or pining. South of the rivers flowing east, the girl heavy with wanting, she can't say what she hasn't tasted. But a visitor has come in the lake, breeze soft as bluebell, an avocado in an open hand, alien as a glacial boulder in a field where a girl can't say if it's fruit or vegetable. But a slice of it is in her mouth when she hears someone cry that Elvis Presley has died. It is in her mouth, this strange first taste of avocado and loss, this woman's talk of when there was nothing but farmland and wild rose between coyote and church until the king's music. Those hips and what could not be televised. The spillways of their voices with the radio and magpies, bare feet beneath lawn chairs. The girl still yearns from the distance she'll carry, the king of her mother's remembered youth, the avocado's tender bitterness for the words long held in the mouth, not believing yet in the lonely street, so far from the aspens, trembling. Well, wasn't that lovely? I was rearranging bookshelves and whatnot down in the dim and dark archives. And I came across many forgotten items, including this 1988 chapbook from Stuart Ross called Bunny Baby, the Child with Magnificent Ears. The telephone call. A man in a dark suit enters a telephone booth. He pulls an oyster from his pocket, deposits it, and listens for the dial tone. Jacques Cousteau answers, says, "Life is many things. An acrobat may hang by his teeth, but not tell his dentist." The man in the suit hangs up, goes to his office, and sells his brother-in-law. Another forgotten chapbook, Religion of Contingency by Jacob Shire. Or is that Shire? That's my greatest problem here on the Poetry Show. Pronouncing people's names properly or improperly. I hope you'll all understand. 3 true stories of Virginia Woolf's suicide. I had words for the ordinary and words for miracles, and they were the same words, yet could not conceal the language of all that was ugly. So thought Virginia, as the last current scraped her cheek, and now her whole face beneath the river. I saw God in the faces of children, counting the seconds between thunder, and now I must know if I will see him without sight, without breath. So thought Virginia, as just below the surface she saw brushstrokes of sunlight rise above her head. Another moment is passing. So it is thought, and somewhere it is recorded, even though I will not be the one to write it, even though it will not be written. So thought Virginia, her breath retracting inwards, her breath the language of oceans. That was 2003. And now, 4 years later, from his Governor General's award-winning More to Keep Us Warm. Jacob Shire. Big band music. It is music which could only be written before the Second War, before the soundtrack of Europe was composed by mice running along piano keys. It is music meant for how our bodies used to be, before the dance steps we learned became a talent for avoiding the landmines beneath our feet. There is something in the pace of the rhythm, how it doesn't slow to take in a landscape, how it assumes the world will still be there when the music stops. The song is replaced by the hourly news, the wars which are now commercials between melodies. I turn off the radio and lie still, taking in all the sounds my body makes when all else is quiet. How fragile and clumsy this machinery seems. I am lying here waiting for an assassin with the wrong address, or something heavy like love or a piano to fall on me. I am surprised that just once my heart hasn't forgotten to beat, like when I confuse the days of the week or which people are still alive. How my heart still remembers to pump blood through my body when I forget so easily all the little things that need to be done to remain alive. To look both ways before crossing the street and forgive people before tumors fill their ears and they can only hear decay. I have been lying here so long I can recognize the chorus of my breath and think I have just been shot when the phone rings. This could be the call, the $1 million call, the Jesus call. Virginia Woolf explaining the day she chose the heaviness of stones and the anonymity of rivers over the weight and light of the world. I have been lying here too long to distinguish war from suicide. Billy Collins. We've been doing quite a round of Billy Collins of late, and this appears to be his newest book, Horoscopes for the Dead. The Flaneur. He considers the boulevards ideal for thinking, so he takes the air on a weekday evening to best appreciate the crisis of modern life. I thought I would try this for a while, but instead of being in Paris, I was in Florida. So the time-honored sights were not available to me, despite my regimen of aimless strolling. No kiosks or glass-roofed arcades, no beggar with a kerchief covering her hair, no woman holding her hat down as she crossed a street, no Victor Hugo look-alike scowling in a greatcoat, no girls selling fruit or sweets from a cart, no prostitutes circled under a street lamp, no solitude of the moving crowd where I could find the dream of refuge. I did notice a man looking at his watch, and I reflected briefly on the passage of time. Then I saw two ladies dressed in lime green and pink, and I pondered the fate of the sister arts as they stepped into the street, arm in arm. Who needs Europe? I muttered into my scarf as a boy flew by on a skateboard, and I fell into a reverie on the folly of youth and the tender, distressing estrangement of my life. Who needs Europe? Well, I don't know, Billy. Sometimes I think you need it. Another fine Toronto poet, whom we have not heard, not enough of, but not at all on the poetry show, and that will be immediately remedied. Nicholas Power. His contribution to the Fetschrift, A Trip Around McFadden, celebrating David McFadden's 70th birthday. This nifty little poem, well, it's not that little, Proprioception, a word I'm not completely familiar with, but I certainly enjoyed pronouncing it. A quote from David here. It certainly changes the color of your day, knowing that sometime today you have to write a poem. I want to explain how neutrinos glide through our bodies as we talk, how the invisible life of the universe slips through us constantly, sliding by like moonlight at midday. Atomic memories as elusive as forgotten dreams, unfolding in the empty theater of space. Between the particles of myself, there is room for you to pull up an odd-shaped chair. There is unlimited space amid my spinning selves. I am trembling as I speak. Cells murmur. Behind me there are voices, a whole city in the brain. A door opens and people walk through unaware. They are in a poem. This poem desires to sit with each one of you, listening to your poetry, each one taking the synaptic leap of faith, arriving in many places at the same time. This poem wants to know its own comings and goings, like the movement of a muscle. This poem wants to have a sense of its own location in space and time. It wants to perceive and to know itself perceiving, to know that its sensations have their own patterns. Beneath what the brain of this poem thinks about them. This poem is a body with its own awareness. The mind of this poem knows itself in each word, each phrase, each incomplete sentence. This poem wants to describe the relationship between two unknowns by talking about the changes that curve between them. This poem sees me sitting in my chair, hands gripping the arms, hanging on for the ride. It sees me pulling my hair up to stay awake, hears me thinking like a jealous boyfriend, a worried parent, a younger brother, an agony aunt. This poem watches me when I've crossed the line, when I've said too much, when I've been too quiet. This poem is listening from many sides of the room, turns itself at different angles, adjusts itself, plants its feet, crosses and uncrosses its arms, its feet, its fingers, and now I remember why I am here. This is the work I live my life to do. We return constantly to these moments, this unity of time and place, this pulse. All other possibilities exist alongside these moments. What is said and what is not said. We sift and shift along this moving margin, observing not only ourselves, but the vast spaces between. Thank you, Nicholas. On the next poetry show, we'll be talking to Toronto poet Jim Smith and his new book about one of his favorite poets. As a little teaser, let me read from a poem on a similar subject matter from his last collection, Back Off, Assassin! Your big day. You spread a map on the floor, stride from Chile to Paris to Chicago to Toronto to New York to Chile. Big steps. Small soldiers tickle your feet. Skeletons climb down out of corners and clamber over the soldiers. Pits fill with brass casings hot from tiny guns. A tank grinds up. You step on it. You marry 3 times. A national anthem plays until it is overthrown. A poet is buried on Isla Negra. You paint a chrome yellow sun on the ceiling. It goes nova. Everything is incinerated but for Nicancor Para, who floats alone in space. Hi, Nicancor. We love you. And we love you on the Poetry Show, dear listeners and lovers of poetry. Let us bind ourselves in the eternal brotherhood of beautiful words and intoxicating rhythm.